Imagine going from one store to over 100 stores in 5 years. As an independent retailer, tackling the big brands head on and doing it even though you're a bricks and mortar chain by fulfilling over 80% of your orders through e-commerce. Oh, and the cherry on the cake, having a sell-through rate of less than 2 days. Welcome to the Bringing Business to Retail podcast, where we talk all about strategies to make more money in your retail and e-commerce business. And today's guest, Stephen Preuss, is the CEO and co-founder of the store that has done all of those crazy things. And he is going to share his journey with you and give you some insights as to what happens when you grow so fast. Hey, Stephen, welcome.
Hello, Selena. Happy to be here. Looking forward to our conversation today.
So many people have this concept of a store that, like, taking their one store and turning it into an empire. But actually, most people, when you press them on it, can't even fathom having 5 stores, 10 stores, 20 stores, let alone, I think you're up to 105 stores and still growing. Did you always want the empire?
We always knew that we wanted something larger and something to really disrupt retail and secondhand. But even though we're at 105 stores now and we've grown from 2020 to 2025, we went from literally 1 to 100 plus. It was a 21-year journey to get here. So my partner and I, Eric, started with one store in 2004. So it's been a 2-decade journey.
Wow.
We had a secondhand store, and it wasn't PayMore at that point in time. We weren't focusing on electronics. We were just taking anything in we could and selling it for as much as we could. And if we could make a profit in between, that was great. We ran that initial business for about 6 or 7 years. We did a lot wrong, but in a lot of those errors that we made, we learned what we wanted to do and what we wanted to create PayMore with. Number one was electronics. We were making more money and we were making huge connections in the electronics world. So we wanted to really focus on that. And there was no one else doing that at that point in time. And then just as important, we saw a really need to change the way that people experience the secondhand. Most people, when you think of secondhand store, you think of a pawn shop. You think of these stores that are not, bright and airy, that are safe and secure, really a stigmatized space. We wanted to really take the secondhand, focus on the customer experience, which was not done at that point in time, and make it an elevated retail experience where people would fold it into their weekly or monthly shopping habits without the stigma. So we took the secondhand experience and we took optionality in the electronic space, and we put that together. We created PayMore, and we started actually our first PayMore store in 2011. At that point in time, there was really nothing else out there like us, and we created our own technology as well, and our software and our operating system, fully customized for our business. And we went on our journey, and we created our software to be fully proprietary, fully customized for the secondhand electronic space. And in 2017, now running 7 years with the PayMore brand, really fine-tuning our business model, putting a lot of our investment, in fact, over 90% of our investment over this time was in our technology. We realized after, several years of running our PayMore store that we had something. We had lines out the door. We had a great repeat customer rate, which is unheard of in the secondhand industry. We were doing great with our sales. We looked around and we said, listen, we have to expand. We didn't see anyone else out there doing what we were doing. So we chose the franchising route, and we wanted to really get coast to coast. And we thought that franchising would be the best tool to do that. So in 2020, after this kind of 15, 16-year journey of doing a lot of things wrong and automating it and wrapping technology around it and really focusing on the customer, we decided to go that route and expand through the franchising. And that was really our tool to get from what was then 2 stores now to 105, as you mentioned.
I have so many questions around the franchising route and all those sorts of things. But if we can go back, because you've said something that really touches my heart, because when I first started my first bricks and mortar store, was Baby and Kids. And we did, for exactly the same reason, we went into, like, half of the store was pre-loved maternity wear. And for me, it was looking at, as having been pregnant and becoming a mum, it was, I want nice things, but I don't want to pay a ridiculous amount of money for something I'm literally only going to wear for a few months. And I sort of had two options because, I don't like to spend money, Stephen. I'm a bit of a tight ass. And so I had two options. I would either go to the outlet malls and get things that kind of sort of fit, or I would pick up a lot of things. Back in the day, this was in 2007, we did a lot of eBaying. We did a lot of, picking things up secondhand off of like we have Gumtree here, like your Craigslist, and just trying to find in those parenting forums secondhand stuff. And like you said, there wasn't, and I still don't know that it's come a huge way. I know that there is a lot of reselling boutiques when it comes to clothing, and you're in electronics, but I still think there is that stigma that comes with secondhand or pre-loved or, lightly used, whatever word we want to put on it. Someone's used it before and now we're going to use it. So one of the things that you mentioned was taking away the stigma that comes with, especially secondhand electronics. I think that has even more of a stigma because we've all watched the TV show where the thieves break in and they're taking it to the local pawn shop and everyone is a bit sketchy. And so can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I love the pre-loved kind of name there that you gave it. Maybe I'll use that with our electronics, but we like to say gently used, which is most of electronics. But yeah, I mean, the stigma was always something that, and we still to this day, we combat against on a daily basis. And maybe it's landlords allowing a PayMore store into their retail center, or just that education with the public. But if you think about it, you're talking about clothes, which, is kind of maybe I want to say a nominal cost, but on a price per piece, it's certainly typically lower. But you think about it, more people buy more pre-owned cars than they do new cars. The houses that you buy, most people buy something that's been built before and lived before, and then they purchase it as opposed to going and buying something brand new or building something brand new. So, the concept now with us, the electronics is their most used and their most expensive commodity outside of cars and houses, of course, but their most used commodity. And, let's face it, a new iPhone is not cheap. A new laptop is not cheap. So people need to be educated that there's a place that you can go to. Number one, go into, and we think of our stores as almost of a pre-owned Apple store, very clean, modern, bright and airy, not products piled on top of each other, and in better centers where it's safe and secure, where people are walking in. And then our technology, which is the complex part of things, that allows us to properly price and let us know exactly how much we can pay for an item within a minute or two, and then give them the reasoning behind it and give them a fair deal in cash where we're not, giving them a gift card. We're not, wrapping them into a 2-year warranty like a lot of these national carriers do, or, not giving them, fair value and trying to have them buy a new product from us like Apple does. So we're empowering the customer, giving them the money in hand and allowing them to do whatever they want with that money, whether it's pay rent or a vacation for their family or whatever have you. So I think it's the education part of it. And, we're obviously, building this new category of business, and we stay on top of all these different types of feedback and all these press releases and percentages. And what I've seen or what I've read, I've seen anywhere from 64 to 91% of people would consider doing secondhand, either for their birthday gifts or their holiday gifts or just dealing in secondhand in general. But 90% of that 64 to 91% doesn't know where to go to deal in secondhand. So right now we're in this education phase, and we've done it. We have 105 stores open now, both in the US as well as abroad in Canada and UK. And anywhere we open the store, we become the highest grossing secondhand store in this specific market where we have one of these stores. Obviously, we've solved a lot of the technological issues, but it's now people are being educated that there is a place that they can go, feel comfortable, feel safe, secure, get a fair deal, and be really a brand ambassador for us, telling people that, there is a place that, you can go to, deal in the secondhand, get something gently used or pre-loved, for a lot less and feel good about the transaction.
So I must ask, I've got two questions around customer experience / branding. And my first one is, you said that the stores are light and bright and airy and that products are not put on top of each other. Do you do any heat mapping or do you do any psychological assessment of how customers shop for your bricks and mortar stores?
Yeah, so a lot of it was through that, trial and error basis, for many years. And we've redone our first store over in Long Island, New York, many, many times. And we moved it around once. So again, we want all facets of life, population, income, age, whatever have you, to feel comfortable to coming in the store. And that's really key, because secondhand typically is in kind of the side street or is not very inviting, or, gates on the door. So we wanted to really place it where all demographics are welcome. So then that's kind of what we've done. And then as we've opened stores, we've brought in very educated, a lot smarter third parties than us to do analysis for us to make sure that, number one, we're customer focused. Number two, we're welcome for everybody, because everyone is a client, 18 to 34, people who are downsizing, their houses, to people that are in our stores every week. So everyone, has a need for cash in hand, has a need for, the best deal that they can get for electronics, whether it's a retail customer or a business customer, which is B2B, which is a lot of our business now these days and going forward. So we've done a lot by trial and error, but we've also balanced it with a lot of investment with third parties that can assist us to make sure that we're making the right decisions, not only for us as a corporate, but for our franchisees.
We had a fantastic guest on who has a product called Flagship. And what it does is it real-time maps how much money each section of your store is making. And my brain was immediately going to that. When you're saying 105 stores, I'm like, I want to know where all the hot spots are.
So that kind of goes into the question that you mentioned before, the comment that you mentioned before about 80% of our sales goes through e-commerce, which is a true statement. But 20 and growing on a monthly basis, 20% growing on a monthly basis is our retail. So our front of the store, which is our beautiful cabinetry and really where most of our investment goes, we have a lot of like stock A type of product, right? Those Apple products, those gently used products, those really the gaming that is on the top of everyone's mind, like the PlayStations. That's all in the front, but that's only about 20% of our product. 80% of our product is behind that dividing wall from the retail to the storage in the back. And what we've done is we've put iPads in front where people can shop. Not only they can see in the front of our store, but they can shop what's in the back of our store or what's in the back of the local stores, which we call our labor saver, where they can go in and if they like something, they can press it, we can bring it out, or we can ship it to them. So I guess the long-winded answer is that it's only a certain percentage that's in the front. That's really our retail ready type of product. But we have all that product in the back that they can, who's coming in and shopping retail, can go through our iPad to see. And then most of that product, as we're talking about, is shipped through e-commerce, which is, a really different concept for retail. Again, as you highlighted before, and it's different where, you really in retail, you need to have the lights on to make money. In our business, you don't need the lights on to make money. You just need to be open long enough to collect the product so we can sell it online. And a lot of that product goes throughout, US nationally. We do buy broken products, and that's a big part of our business as well, because, most of the online companies that you can mail stuff in, they just want the top 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 products. We're a portfolio buyer. So anything you can put a battery into or plug into the wall, spanning all different electronics. Anything that you have in mind as an electronic, we'll buy. And a lot of that products through e-commerce, 75% of our broken product goes to international recipients all over the world. And, in places where, people can't get, better, tech, or doesn't have better tech in their local communities, they're buying it from PayMore companies and PayMore stores. So it's really an interesting dynamic. We like to coin ourselves as kind of the new age retail, where yes, you do have a brick and mortar location, but we are at our core, we're driven by data, e-commerce, and technology.
It's funny because I was just thinking there, and I could get this brand wrong because I am not English, but my husband is English. And I remember the first time I went to England, we went to a store, I think it was called Argos, but please don't shoot me down if I got this wrong. And essentially what you did, this was a long time ago, Stephen, like bear with me, this is going to be, 20 years ago. And you went to like a hole in the wall shop and it was paper catalogs, guys. But I imagine that now if they do it, it's iPads. But essentially you went through the catalog and you did the order with the person. And then there was this massive warehouse out the back and a conveyor belt would just come out with your product. And to me, this is the modern day version of that, which is, like you said, the labor saver. You've got your retail associates at the front, but out the back where it's a lot cheaper and it's not all pretty and glossy, you've got a whole bunch of stuff that people can still buy. I love that. I have to ask you, Stephen, are you a retail company or are you a technology company or are you a logistics company? What do you really think PayMore is?
It depends who you ask. But, for my partner and I, Eric and I mean, we are a technology company at our core, but we are a balance of retail and technology. And I think this is the way for retailers. Listen, you may have one store or two stores or a local market or a county, and you may be able to survive off of just being a retail store. And obviously, food is different in many respects. But as far as, a commodity, this is the new age business for retail, right? You have to have retail locations, but you have to have that technology angle to be able to scale. So, in our minds, yes, we are a technology and data company, but we were forward thinking in that manner, but, we built through our retail, environments and our retail scale. So we wouldn't be doing what we were doing on the technology and data and e-commerce side without this retail footprint. And I think that sets us apart. And I probably are one of our keys to success on growing, because you see, people that are just doing mail-in sites or people that have, one or two stores, that, they're running, a certain area with. But for us to do what we've done and conquer the US and now growing internationally, we need the retail stores, because you're creating that trust, and that comfortability with the client and those local markets. But you need that technology to be able to scale and grow and have that optionality. So it depends who you ask. And that's my answer, and I'm sticking to it.
I mentioned before I had a branding and marketing. I've got a branding and a marketing question. So on my branding side, I would love to know, because you've mentioned quite a few times about the money that you're paying for people to bring in their goods is a fair amount and you're not tying them into contracts and very customer focused. But you've been focused on the money, and even the name PayMore is focused on the money. At any point, has the branding moved into, because this is my first love. This is a purely selfish question. My first love is sustainability and the environment. And actually what you guys are doing, whether it is putting things, circular economy for electronics, whether it is allowing those electronics to go to different countries where they can't access that tech, there is a huge digital rubbish, tech rubbish.
E-waste.
I don't know what.
E-waste.
Waste. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. There's a huge e-waste problem all over the world. And so what I'm seeing you do is, this is a really big stepping stone to allow people to feel like they're contributing back to the environment and the economy, and whether they take money, whether they buy something else from your store. I'm curious around the branding. Tell me more about the branding.
I'm glad you brought that up, because part of our vision, and you know, sometimes this doesn't get into the conversation early enough. Obviously, we go to the highlights, right, which are, you know, better retail experience and cash in hand, and with that cash in hand, we're a big socioeconomic driver in these communities because we're putting out, you know, several $100,000 in cash in these communities, which is being spent in these communities. But e-waste is one of our big visions. We are a green company at our core, right? So we are now recycling, and we do this in each and every one of our stores. We responsibly recycle, and we do it for free for the community. So that means that somebody wants to come in and sell something that's great if there's no value to an item, or if they want to bring in something and bring in, you know, 10 pounds of recycling, we'll do it for them for free, and we'll do it responsibly. Our stores are now pumping out over 1 million pounds of e-waste that we're keeping out of landfills, out of our stores. So this is a huge effort for us. This has always been our vision. Obviously, it's a little bit behind as far as the notoriety, as far as what we're doing on the cash end, empowering people coming in and giving them cash. But we're right behind that. We're not only e-waste focused, but we're also a big proponents of data safety as well. So all of these items that you're bringing into our stores will wipe your items and remove all that precious data in front of you, again, for free, to make sure that, you know, you're protected when you're going and selling these items. But then on the back end, we are recycling and keeping all of this out of landfills with this e-waste. So I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of the podcasts that I do kind of goes to the more attractive items, but we don't get to what the real core is, which is really keeping a lot of these items out of landfills and taking out as much e-waste as we can out of these communities.
And we have the draw. We're a very tech-first family. There are only 3 of us, but I can tell you, I can tell you that right now, I have 2 mobile phones on my desk. That's so sad, is it? It's only because I've just got a new one. In fact, I don't get a new one. I'm so, society focused that my husband is like the latest iPhone guy, and he gets one every, I don't know, year or 2. So I just take his secondhand one because I'm perfectly okay with a 12-month-old iPhone. And I have 2 on my desk because I haven't finished the data migration from one to the other. But we're a house of 3 people, and I know for a fact we have at least 6 very recent phones. I think the oldest phone is mine, which is an iPhone 12. I also have 2 laptops sitting on my desk, and I've just bought a 3rd. And each one gets used. I have 2 on my desk for a reason. One is specifically for downloading data and uploading data because I don't want it to take up my space. I just got a new Mac because I ran out of space on this one, and I haven't finished migrating it. But as a family of 3, we have 6 mobile phones. I'm going to say we have probably 8, maybe 9 laptops, which is scary. And one of the reasons we have so many is exactly what you were just talking about, which is if I take it into the Apple store, even my iPhone 12, which is 3 years old, it literally has no value to them. So the other option is I have to go and try and sell it on Marketplace, or, it's always a little bit sketchy when you're selling electronics, even on Facebook Marketplace. Or I end up usually giving them to somebody, like one of my daughter's friends or something. You just take the phone. What else am I going to do with it? And so I love that the fact that you're going to appeal to not just the lower socioeconomic people who 100% need your service, but there are also people who, like me, who are just what do I do with this? If there's a value to me, which is that it's too valuable to throw away, but there's no value to the Apple store, and I really don't want to do sketchy Facebook Marketplace, what are my options? And I love that you have that available. We don't have that here in Australia. So I think it's amazing that you guys have it.
Yeah, and first of all, there is a value to it, number one. So it may not be hundreds of dollars, but there is something that we can monetize that for you, or we'll give you credit towards buying something else just for coming in the store. And, we'll wipe it for you, which is a big hurdle for a lot of people. And I know, I'm still guilty of that to some extent. Well, I'll keep some of my phones up, but now I can go to a place where, you can wipe that data, maybe get a gift card towards, a phone for my son or for somebody else in my family. if there is a monetary value. If you don't want that monetary value, we can donate it for you through our network as well. Send somebody a check or a wire. So there's all different types of things that you can do instead of going into a big box store and getting railroaded into the one or two things that they're either approved to sell or they're pushed to sell. And, we just want to empower customers, right? Again, this is one of their most expensive and used commodities. They shouldn't have one or two options that are not favorable to them, right? So I think we've solved a lot of those electronic questions and options, empowering the person to make their own decisions and doing what they want with the money that they get for it.
And it really is that innovation of seeing this gap in the market. And I know that you're passionate about this, and I know that you want people of all walks of life to be able to access this service. And so it's the typical retail founder. We saw a market, we went out, we made this thing. But in that, when you were making the decision between licensing and franchising, a lot of people don't really know the difference between the two. I can tell you one of the big differences. Franchising costs a lot more money and it's a lot more heavily regulated. And so can you tell us what that decision looked like for you and your business partner, and how did you choose franchising? And then what were the biggest obstacles for people who've maybe been thinking about it? What were those things you're like, this is a red flag that nobody told us about?
Yeah, sure. So when we were thinking of expanding and bringing our concept at that point in time to the world, to the marketplace, there's really three options. There was one, us doing it ourselves. There was number two, franchising. And then there was also the option of licensing. So what we found is that what we do is even though it's simplistic to its core, it's very complex as well, adding in all the technology and e-commerce and data. And we were the first mover, right? So there was no one else doing what we're doing in the US and in most places around the world. And for us to grow quickly outside of, me and my partner going from New York to New Jersey, we wanted to really get this out there and take advantage of the first mover advantage. But also we feel that every community needs this service, whether it's urban, suburban, or otherwise. So we chose the scale route, if you will. And then we looked at franchising and licensing. So what we've learned very quickly through going through speaking to some strategic advisors is that licensing is a little bit more of a redundant type of process where you can take something, license it, kind of move it on, collect a licensing fee. But what we do is not something that's well known to the masses, right? It's not software, a simple piece of software. It's not, food where, if you're dealing in hamburgers and you start up a pizza franchise, there's 90% of the carryover that can go with food from one version to the next. We create our own buy, sell, and trade of electronics infused with technology, and it really takes a little bit more than just licensing it out or handing it to somebody and having them run with it. There's a heck of a lot of investment, of support, of oversight, of initiatives, of continuing day to day, of making changes and automation. So we felt it was best to franchise because of that heavy background and support and investment, to make sure that, I guess, if you were just doing a licensing deal, that might fall apart pretty quickly without all of the back end services that we needed to provide to make sure that that person who is taking our concept and business model and making it successful would be successful over the long term. So we chose the franchising route because even though we've built a very sustainable and scalable franchise model, there is so much that needs to be done on the back end. Right now, we have over 140 software and tech developers and coders on our payroll right now. And not only 140 of those, but then we have another 20 support people on the front end dealing with the stores and supporting them and teaching them and taking what our developers are doing and then conveying that and teaching that to the stores. So the support end of things for our business, because we are groundbreaking and we are, fairly new to the world, and a disruptor was the best route to make sure that our vision over the last 20 years is now executed at the proper and a very high level with the support that we need to provide. So I guess that was really the crux. I mean, I can keep you on here for another 2 hours telling you all the other things that why we chose the franchise. But I think at the root of it, we wanted our concept to be carried out properly. And with that, you need all the support and investment and everything behind it. And that is better served with the franchise model.
If we can wrap up with one final question, which is all about marketing. I love to know, I love customer experience, but I also love to know, how do people know that you exist? How do people want what you sell? And apart from your physical locations, you said a lot of it was fulfilled online. So how do people learn more? Like, how do you get that PayMore brand out there? And can you tell us a little bit more, if people haven't heard of you before, when you're doing that marketing, what is that messaging surrounding? What is the thing that is going to bring somebody to a PayMore website or into a store?
Yeah, so it's really a couple different buckets, but we have a very succinct and efficient online campaign that we market with. And this is, my partner mainly, Eric, who's really kind of took all of the data that we've had over the last 20 years on what drives a person to a store, or why they come to a store. And with this online program, we implement it store by store basis. And once we turn this on for one of our franchisees, people are coming in that store like we've been there for 10 years. So that's how we initially get them in. And then to keep them there, obviously it's customer focused as far as making it the best transaction and the quickest transaction possible, because we know that everybody's time is crucial to them. With our technology and our data system, we can get somebody in and out of our store in 7 minutes on average, where the average secondhand transaction is about 55 minutes. So not only are we giving them a pleasurable experience, but we're getting them in and out quickly with a fair deal. So that's how we get them in the store, through our online program. That's how we keep them there with a really highly elevated retail experience. And then as far as how we sell, through our technology, we're able to put our item that we sell on 15 platforms at once, instantaneously. And then once they're bought on any one of those platforms, it immediately takes them off everything. We also guide our franchisees on the best place to sell it, whether it is eBay, which is a big part of our system. They were our title sponsor at our franchisee convention just a few weeks ago. We have a very, very good relationship with them as one of their authorized and suggested retailers and their preferred developers for electronics selling on their platform. We're telling our franchisees where to sell it, where to sell the quickest for the most efficient place possible. So I think through our technology and our experiences, from the beginning to the back end, really, we've created this industry. We know where to sell these items. Our technology is guiding our franchisees as best as possible. And this is really only done off of, a few dozen stores. We just hit our 100th store just last month, and now we're getting much more data as we're opening one store every 2.5 days throughout the world, which is pretty incredible. So, I think that experience, that two-decade long process in the marketplace, and then wrapping technology around everything that we know, really allows us to access that client pretty quickly in the beginning and have them come into the store, keep them in the store, and then also on the sell side to make sure that we're selling at the highest level as well. And then also integrating with a lot of these big tech partners like eBay and Google and Shopify.
Do you think that more brands can be doing something similar to you? And I'm not saying necessarily going out and building this technology, but I'm thinking about stores like the North Face. They have their own in-house reselling platform where you can go on. I don't even think they take a cut for it, but you can go on and you can sell your pre-loved North Face jacket to make sure it gets a new home. And look, we all know they do it to, one, they do it to give back, but two, they do it to protect their brand. But if we're moving to the people who are listening, who maybe they're product brands, or maybe they do sell other people's product, So maybe they're boutiques, maybe they're jewelry stores, maybe they do something like electronics. If they were going to move into this pre-loved reselling market, what are some tips that you have for them?
Yeah, so we get this question asked a lot. So thank you for asking this. And Eric and I get this, kind of, or ask this guidance quite a bit with our thought leadership. Is a lot of people are getting into secondhands, and secondhand in our vision is the way of the future, right? I think that this is going to balance out, as I mentioned before, with my example with houses and cars, and most of it is done, through a kind of a pre-owned type of viewpoint, that most of these products will balance out 50-50, maybe new and pre-owned. But the problem is that a lot of these larger companies, they may offer pre-owned, but their main goal is to bring you back into their new product, right? They want to keep you in their ecosystem, which is fine. But I think, these companies that want to deal in the secondhand, maybe it's better for them to partner with a secondhand specialist, where it separates their main goal, or how they kind of move you in that funnel on bringing you back into their new product, giving you gift cards and things of that nature, which is kind of one of our biggest success stories. Companies like Best Buy and things like that had secondhand or, trade-ins for a long, long time, but they're only giving you gift cards back into the store. So they're really just saying, hey, we'll take this from you, usually at a much lowered price, but here's a gift card and you're going to have to go back into the store and buy something new. So that's not giving empowerment to the customer, right? You're kind of just bringing them back into that mousetrap. So if somebody wants to deal into the secondhand, which most companies should, maybe you find a third party to partner with to be able to, allocate them as the secondhand specialist for their product or their preferred vendor, where it separates their main, ideal from, dealing with the secondhand. And then really just allowing the customers to make their decision themselves. If you give a superior product, a superior service, that customer is going to come back to you anyway, and they're going to appreciate you giving them a third party that has their best interest in mind. So that's tough to say, and I know that's not the way of the world, for general capitalism, but in my mind, that's the way it's going to have to work for people to really be out there and empowered and be able to do what they need to do or want to do with that money, instead of going back in and having to buy new from that same customer or that same retail brand.
I think that's a very sage piece of advice, Stephen. Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for coming on to the podcast, because this is my first love. So how do we keep things moving through the economy? How do we keep people coming back? But also, how do we keep that sustainability? So thank you for sharing this journey with us.
It was my pleasure. I had a really good time with you. Thank you for having me on the show.
So that's a wrap. I'd love to hear what insight you've gotten from this episode and how you're going to put it into action. If you're a social kind of person, follow me at @TheSelena and make sure to leave a comment and let me know. And if this episode made you think a little bit differently, or gave you some inspiration, or perhaps gave you the kick that you needed to take action, then please take a couple of minutes to leave me a review on your platform of choice. Because the more reviews the show gets, the more independent retail and e-commerce stores just like yours that we can help to scale. And when that happens, it's a win for you, a win for your community, and a win for your customers. I'll see you on the next episode.